All right, Gabe, take two. Sorry about that small technical error.
It's all
It
good. Let's
happens. It
roll.
happens after 2 weeks, not with the same technical setup here. So, as we were saying, Lauren was going to ask you the first question. So please fire away, Lauren.
Why did you join the army?
That's an excellent question. Well, I joined the Army back in 2003, and this was back at the time where the U.S. was getting ready to engage in a big conflict in the Middle East. At the time, I felt like it was an opportunity to be a part of something that was bigger than myself in service to my country and in service to humanity. Of course, I learned a lot of lessons along the way since then, but ultimately, I think that the answer is to be a part of something bigger than myself and to make a contribution. Good question.
All right.
Wait,
Well,
oh, I
yeah.
thought we were on mute.
No,
Sorry.
no, we're good. We're good.
So that was faster answer than I thought. Um,
So, do you have any follow-up questions about the army? Because there's lots of different jobs to do.
oh
There
yeah,
definitely are.
what was the job you did, and in your opinion, the worst and coolest job?
Hmm, that's a good question too. Yeah, and it's just like your dad said, there are a lot of different jobs in the military. When I went in as a logistician. So a logistician is a person that handles the logistics of the military of whatever unit that you're in. And so that was my responsibility was getting equipment and parts and materials and bullets and food and all those other things to our guys and also shipping out things that we didn't need anymore. And so logistics was the main part of what I started out doing. Now, as I stayed in a little bit longer, I did a few more things, and I can tell you that the coolest part about it was when they really taught me how to train other soldiers. That was awesome because then I was able to mentor other soldiers that might have been newer into the army that needed some leadership and some guidance and they wanted to grow. So that was really the coolest part of being in the army, because you get to invest in people and you get to watch them grow and you get to watch them succeed, and it was so cool, so cool. Let me see, the hardest thing or the worst thing. Sometimes in the military, you gotta take orders that don't make any sense at all. And sometimes it's not easy to do that because you know that it's not something that makes sense, and that can be challenging sometimes. Is dealing with leaders sometimes who might be knuckleheads, who might not actually know what's going on, and who then give orders that just don't make any sense. So that I think is probably the hardest thing about being in is you can only complain so much until finally, if you decide to complain enough, you can just go ahead and leave, which is ultimately what I ended up doing after 9 years. But yeah, for anybody who's thinking about going in, I would say that it's a good opportunity to invest in some other people, perhaps. But also, there's going to be a whole lot of nonsense that people have to deal with in the long run. Good questions. These are great. What else you got?
Was your job like the safest job there?
It wasn't the most dangerous. I can tell you that. So my job was not going in and like kicking in the doors of terrorists or anything and shooting at people. So my job was more of in the background logistics style job. Now, when I was in Iraq for a little while, and when we were out there, there were a couple of moments where I thought that where my life was in danger, where bombs were going off and things like that. And those moments didn't feel like the safest moments. At those moments, I was like, huh, I wonder if I picked the safest job that was out there or maybe one of the more dangerous jobs. But really, when you get down to it, in the army, when people are overseas and when they're in combat zones, all of the jobs become a little bit more dangerous. But I will tell you that I was not one of the guys that was like leaping out of helicopters or airplanes, shooting rockets off of my shoulder or anything like that, which is pretty awesome. But when I joined the Army, I was actually 27 years old. So I was already an old man by Army standards, not by today's standards. So, but looking back at 27 years old, I was the oldest guy in my entire basic training group. So yeah, they actually wouldn't let me do some of the more active jobs because I was ancient by their standards.
All right. Well, thank you, Lauren.
Well, thank you for answering. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Man, those
Okay,
are good
Gabe.
questions.
So, if you were 27, that means you've been doing something beforehand. What was that? Let's back up into pre-military and certainly fully fiat Gabe.
Yeah, sure. So let me see. Man, back in high school, that's when the recruiters start talking to kids in the United States, and they came and they talked to me when I was 17 years old, and I grew up in a military family. So my dad was in the Navy. He's a career Navy guy. And when they came and talked to me, I said, no way. There's no way I'm going to do anything that has to do with the military. And so I graduated high school and just kind of floated around for a little bit. And then eventually, ironically, I met a fella who had been in the Marine Corps, and he and I had started up a business together. And this was it was in my early 20s. I think I was about 23, 24. And we started up a business together, this was back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And we started up a business that was called an internet gaming center, which by today, it's kind of like, okay, that's kind of lame. But back then, it was pretty dang cool. We enjoyed playing some first-person shooters on computers, and we were hooked on this game called Quake 2. And so it was, basically a bang bang shoot 'em up, and we would chase each other around, and we would shoot each other, and then we would bring our friends in on it. And we said, you know what, let's start up a business where people can come and they can do this. And also, if they just want to access the internet for boring reasons like, research or, looking at, YouTube or something, then that's great. They can do that too. But the idea was it was a gaming center. And so we set that up, and it was in a college town. So we had the college kids were in there all the time. We ended up acquiring a local arcade with some of the profits, and we ended up buying the computer store that sold us our computers too. So we bought a few businesses and just kept on growing in a small town in Southwest Utah until we were finally we were the kingpins that were monopolizing the entertainment industry in Southwest Utah. It was three very small businesses, but we did that for a while. And then we sold all of those. We liquidated. We went ahead and we moved out of those businesses just to focus on family because we were getting stretched too thin. I found myself involved in real estate, actually. And it was during that time that 9/11 happened in the U.S. And then the war that we were gearing up to go to war in Iraq. And at the time I had a couple of young kids at home, and I was, like I said, I was getting close to 30, and I felt the need to be a part of something bigger than myself, just as we were talking about earlier. And I saw this as that opportunity. And then the idea of the military kept on creeping in. And so I said, I'm going to go talk to the Marine Corps because everybody knows that they're the best and they're the baddest. And they said, old man, you need to get on out of here because we're not going to let you join. Go talk to the Army. They'll take anybody. And they did. So they took me in, and that began my journey in the military.
Wow, man, that's a huge decision at that age with a young family as well. Your wife must have been thinking you were crazy. Like, what was wrong with video game stores and living a nice 9 to 5 existence? And
Yeah, it was a tough transition, no doubt. It was a tough transition. And the kids at the time, they were young, and man, I tell you, it was tough leaving home. It was not easy. And then, went to training for 6 months, and then immediately after that went to Korea for a year. And so that family separation was, man, it's no joke. It is no joke. But at the same time, it when the first time my kids saw me in uniform, they looked at me and they saw me as part of something bigger. And I wanted to, it did something to me inside to know that I was setting an example of service to them. And of course, looking back and knowing what I know about the military now and the agendas and so forth, and we can get into all that, but still at the time, for them to know that their father made a big decision, stepped out in boldness, and became a part of something bigger than himself, I feel like it made an impression on their lives that I hope was a positive one.
So this, yeah, this word recruitment is, I mean, that's exactly what's going on, right? That when they come around to the schools and when they release these films, you know, Top Gun is a classic Navy recruitment film.
No doubt.
Now there's Top Gun 2. I still haven't watched that, and I hope I hope it doesn't have the same effect that it did on me as a young man, because it just made things look cool, like flying around, blowing people out the sky. You know, you have no attachment at all at that age to the other human being that's flying that plane, and you know, or any of the agendas, like you said, and we can surely go down that rabbit hole, of course. And what I'm seeing in France at the moment is pretty freaking odd, man. Like they're rolling out next year for the kids aged 16 to 18, that if they're struggling with their what they call a back here, which might be equivalent to a high school diploma or something like that, I guess, in the US. So if you're struggling with those grades, if you go and join the army or the military of any sort for, I don't know, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is, you can bump those grades up.
Wow.
And I'm thinking, wow, that is such a freaking psyop recruitment, underhanded way. And I can guarantee you, they're not going to be beasted in that 6 to 8 weeks. They're going to be driving around tanks, doing all the cool stuff, you know, whatever it will be, hanging with the boys, singing songs around a campfire. You know, they're going to make it as cozy as possible, as fun as possible, you know, so they'll all come back. And this to me is like really, and last little anecdotal story. We were watching the Rugby World Cup that was running here in October, if I'm not mistaken. I can't remember. And just recently, the Six Nations, which is where France, Italy, Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales all get pulled around together, and you know the last man wins all the points, wins the championship. And every single advertisement break, it was RAF or it was Army or it was Navy. I'm like, man, like they know what they're doing when they are. I mean, well, they're the masters of psyops.
Oh yeah, yeah, they absolutely know what they're doing. And I'm speaking from someone who was actually inside that machine for 3.5 years. My final job in the Army actually was as a recruiter. So I did that for 3.5 years, and I guess it's not coincidental that was the job that finally pushed me to go ahead and leave, because you're absolutely right. And the recruiting command in every branch of the military is they're just ruthless, and they do know exactly what they're doing, and they have a multi-million-dollar marketing machine behind them, and they know their market, and they understand how to appeal to them. And it's just, you know, just like you said with that program where, okay, guys, come on in and join, and we'll show you how awesome it is. And it's always going to be like this. It's always going to be the coolest thing ever. And you're going to love your life, and you're going to be a hero and all this fantastic, crazy stuff. But then when they actually do join the military, yeah, they're going to be shoveling, you know, shit with everybody else. They're going to be, you know, hating life. They're going to be out there away from their families, and they're going to know that they're doing it for something that is ultimately pointless. So I can tell you that the recruiting effort in the U.S. has been struggling terribly. They haven't made their mission in a couple of years now. Even with all of that marketing that they have, and even with the psyops, and even with all the perks, and they're throwing bonuses at people, thousands and thousands of dollars at people just for signing up. they can't make their mission because there are enough of us, there are enough veterans, I believe we have an impact, that there are enough veterans in the US that are speaking out and talking to the next generation and informing them that, they really want to take a look at this very closely if it's an actual decision that they want to make in life, because it's not what it seems. It's not going to be what they tell you it's going to be. And there is a larger agenda that is attached to all of it that you will then implicitly be a part of. So if people are willing to accept those facts, okay, then they can go ahead and they can go on in. And some people still do, having that full awareness for whatever their motivations may be. But yeah, it still happens. Yeah, it is hardcore in the US right now because they are not getting enough people. So yeah, we have a lot of conversations about that in our veterans group, about, okay, well, how are they going to do that? Because they're not going to go without. They're going to need to get some people in, especially when they keep poking sticks at everybody around the world and stirring up, China and Russia and everywhere else. What are you going to do? Where are you going to get your manpower? So it's going to be interesting to see how that develops.
Well, I don't know if you have any. Is your veterans group U.S. military only, or open to vets from all around the world?
Yeah. So we started out, I mean, really, just we just did it. Started out with a group of us, Bitcoin veterans. We're all there. It started out with 5 of us, just, BSing with each other. Started out as a small chat group on Twitter, and we ended up growing to about 100, and then decided to migrate away from Twitter. And then, yeah, so it largely started out as just US veterans because, that's just who we know. And it's been growing and growing and growing. But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I've been receiving requests on LinkedIn now, mostly from veterans in the UK asking if they can be a part of this. And of course, we're like, yeah, man, come on in. You're one of us. And so it's starting to grow, primarily in the UK. And it's going to be interesting to see because I'm anticipating it to keep going. And I've run into veterans, at different Bitcoin conferences from places like Germany, and Australia, who have indicated that they're interested in it. We haven't formalized anything yet, but yeah, it's open to anybody. I mean, the way we see it is, a veteran is a veteran. It's somebody that served. They have a particular understanding and perspective of being inside of that military machine that then they bring outside with them that we feel is a unique perspective that really it's a common perspective that joins us all together.
Yeah, okay. And the reason I asked about the UK because you talked about not making your mission in the US. I guess that means they're not making the amount of numbers that they're supposed to make each year to like a key performance indicator or something.
Yeah, yeah, they have quotas. They all have quotas, all the way down to the major recruiting command, and then down to the regions, and then all the way down to each office that is in all these little towns that are all over the country. So yeah, and they're just as a major command, as a major group, they're way short of their mission for the past 2 years.
So we were in the UK for January,
Hmm.
and the kids, I kind of just overheard them talking about, the latest meme on TikTok or wherever, YouTube Shorts, blah blah blah, and they kept using the word conscription, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like conscription? What do you mean? Do you understand what that means? Like, oh yeah, it means that anybody over the age of 16 with a British passport can get called up to serve in the military, whether they want to or not. I'm like, so why is this being talked about? Like, oh well, because that's what we're being told. Like our age group, like so they're using TikTok to go on and just like beam this stuff at the
Hmm.
kids
Yeah.
about being conscripted or drafted. I guess that would be the word over there. um that's frightening.
Yeah.
So I guess they're not making their numbers either.
No, no, I would imagine not. I think that most of the Western world is struggling with that. I think most places that where they have a majority of a volunteer force are struggling because it is apparent that these, basically, I don't want to get us yanked off of whatever platforms are going to be on, but most of the I would have to say most of the initiatives that are taking place that are affiliated with things like NATO at this point are struggling because they realize that much of it is invasive and unnecessary. And The withdrawal from Afghanistan, I believe, was a huge factor in shifting the perspective of people, at least on a broader scale, to recognize the total failure of the campaigns that are taking place right now in multiple places in the world. It was just a total debacle. If anybody who saw it on TV would know, it was an absolute and total failure, and that was 20 years of warfare that multiple countries were involved in, and then just abandoned it, literally abandoned it, and left our allies there on the ground there to be killed and tortured and worse. And it's just when you see that type of failure and it's so apparent and so clear, it's hard for people to want to get behind that. I believe that they throw the word conscription and drafting and things like that. I think that there are certain elements that kind of let that word seep into the conversations, in part to see how people are going to react to it. They want to see if everyone is going to go up in arms, if things are going to start, catching on fire, literally or figuratively, and how people are going to react. Or if people are going to say, well, okay, conscription's coming. I've been thinking about joining. I might as well just go ahead and do it anyway. But yeah, it's a word that comes up in the social medias in the US also. And it's one that I think it's a little early for us to really consider that we're on the doorstep of that happening, but it's not something that we can ever really truly rule out. However, if it did happen in the US, I'm certain that there would be a very noticeable objection to it, specifically from the veteran community.
Well, you just have to go and find an old YouTube video of the draft,
Yeah.
the Vietnamese for the Vietnam War. I've watched that. It's chilling.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know have you ever seen any footage of that?
Yeah.
Where the guy
Yeah, it's
he
scary where they would.
introduces the program like it's some kind of game show. Like
Yeah.
he's sitting there with a commentator and he's explaining what's going to go on. He's like, we're going to have the balls are going to be pulled out of a hat, and this is going to represent the month, and then it's going to represent the day. I can't remember the exact order. And if that is your birthday of that year, then yeah, come on down. Like you're the winner. I'm like,
Yeah.
my God, I literally could not believe that is how it went down, and this was unreal to me.
Yeah, could you imagine, sitting there with your family and your number comes up? I mean, it's like the Hunger Games. It's wild
Yeah.
stuff when we think about it, that it actually has happened. And so, I think that there's a general mindset of a lot of people right now that don't necessarily think that in reality stuff like that can actually happen, because it feels like ancient history to a lot of kids
Right. The
now.
60s.
Exactly.
Yesterday.
It's like the dinosaur age, but it happened and it can happen again. The conditions just need to be right. I think that now we're in a little bit of a different situation as far as people's ability to resist that sort of an action. And I think that people would on a larger scale be more likely to resist. I think that Bitcoin enables that type of resistance to take place in ways that may not have existed before. But I hope that we don't ever have to find out, because I don't think that it would be a good situation regardless of the outcome. So, but again, if there's one thing that I have faith in, it's the government's ability to continue to mess things up. So we're just going to have to see what happens with that.
Absolutely, mate. And this brings us on to the like the needlessness of war and Bitcoin, and how many of us believe, if we were all living on a sound money standard, then it would end war as we know it. But this goes back. I don't know if it's just a human nature thing. I hope not. But when you look, even Sun Tzu, right? If you go back to his writings, the first point in that book, first sentence, the art of war is of vital importance to the state. Thousands of years, like
Oh, yeah.
this kind of thinking. And have you ever gone down the report from Iron Mountain rabbit hole?
No.
So, a classic case of secret society, secret meeting was formed with the explicit kind of order to go and theorize. I think it was 15 or 17 people go and theorize over the idea of peace even being sustainable. And from that top secret report, which was held in the US, in Iron Mountain, wherever that is, I don't know why it's called that. It's like Jekyll Island. I never knew that was a place until I fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. But of course, this group of men came to the conclusion that, like Sun Tzu, war is of vital importance to the state. And we only know about that report because of a whistleblower, one of the 15, had a conscience at some point. And you go check it on Wikipedia. And this is the conspiracy theory of, okay, brilliant. There's a red flag. I need to know more about this. And when you start reading it, you can read the report. It's all there. You realize, and this is, I'm kind of alluding to the agendas that you were bringing up a little bit earlier.
Yeah. And there's no doubt about it. War is far too attractive to the state for it to not be sought out. The profitability alone, the power positioning, the establishment of dominance in territories, all those things. Thank you for giving me something new to research. My list was running out. I'm just kidding. That list it grows every day. But yeah, it is. And that's no different from, back in Sun Tzu's time to now. And that is one thing, again, that you can always count on from the government is they will always make war, especially now that it has been proven to have the impact that it can have. Let's take a look at what World War II did specifically for the West. That moved us into an entirely new era of prosperity. When that wrapped up for all of the Western nations, let's take a look at NATO and everyone affiliated with that. It was hugely profitable. We built new industries and have thrived from the existence of those industries from that time until now. That model seems to be failing now. It's just not what it is, because in addition to the expansion of war, the government has debased the currency on a rate that is too fast for us to keep up with it. And so it's like there's this contest that they have to make more war and to debase the currency. Of course, they have to debase the currency to print more money so they can, the debasement occurs from printing the money to fund the wars. They can only, tax the people so much, and then they keep on taxing even more and more and more. But yeah, we're going to keep on seeing that happen as long as it is profitable. And as long as the fiat system, which we're currently in, at least, in general, as long as that fiat system is in place, we're going to see the continuance of war. And we'll find, they'll find reasons to get involved in wars. They'll find something. And they'll go out and, and they'll pop somebody off, or they'll, enrage or outrage and, freak everybody out about something. And they will make a war happen. One way or another. They've been doing it for centuries. Really, it's nothing new. But the thing is, just like with the draft from Vietnam, the general public has a pretty short memory. And we're going to focus on, whatever's in front of us, with our TikTok or whatever it is that we have going on that's going to distract us, which in many cases is manufactured and meant to distract us. But as long as we have those nuggets and those dopamine hits and all that exciting nonsense that we can consume our lives with, then whatever's happening on the war front, we're just going to kind of go along with and get mad for a second. And we'll put a flag on our social media profile and support one side or the other and act like we're a part of a cause and feel like our life has a little bit more meaning. But ultimately, there's really nothing more that's happening that hasn't happened time and time again before.
Yeah, and the same people make all the money on the back of it. Like I think Safe's done a few of these episodes. All wars are central bankers' wars. I think he just had Tim Horton. I think that's his name. I was just listening to that one the other day. Really very interesting. Yeah, and when you look at Federal Reserve Act was pushed through Christmas week of 1913. World War I started early 1914. There's no conspiracy theory there, and on the back of
Yeah.
some dude got shot in Sarajevo that nobody even really knew or cared about, but it was the and what we taught is the Entente Cordiale that was the domino effect, and you're like, man, did we
Yeah.
lap that up? Like, you know, it's unreal.
And I remember being in school, in school when I was a young teenager, hearing about that, about Frankfurt, and I was like, well, why did that start a war? Who was this guy? Did he have a lot of friends over here that had this big army and they were really mad about it? It never made sense. It never added up because they don't connect those dots. They just say, okay, well, there was an assassination and then boom. Okay, well, that doesn't make much sense at all. And especially when you take a look at the fact that World War I was then really, I mean, in many ways, it never really ended. It just took sort of a hiatus, and it paused while everything was reworking behind the scenes and underground, and then it reemerged as World War II, which is then expanded out into every major global incident that we've had from then until now. So I think it's kind of important for us to look back on things like that. But you're right. It's just like you said, we just eat it up and say, okay, well, that's history. I probably just don't know enough to understand really what it's about. So I'm just going to leave it to the experts, and they probably know what's up. And I'm sure they're doing this for a good reason. But yeah, it kind of blows my mind. I can tell you that among the veteran population, you see a lot less of that just willingness to accept things just because they're out there. It's like I've said a couple of times, when you're inside the machine, you have just a little bit of a different perspective once you step out of it. So it's an interesting thing.
So you mentioned you were from a military family, and I'm sure many of the veterans in your group are from a military family as well. Seems to be a very prevalent thing, especially in the US. You know, that is something that is handed down to sons, but especially to eldest son. You know, there's that sense of duty. Is that stopping now? Like, what are the conversations you have with your other veterans? I mean, are your kids ever going to join the military? Are these other guys' kids ever going to join the military? Is this the problem we're having with the conscription coming in now? Like,
Yeah, it's a big part of it. I can tell you that while my dad was a career military man, he didn't really push me one way or the other. He's the kind of guy, he loves freedom, and he was, he did what he did and he made his choices. And I learned from his experience in the military, good and bad. He was, he deployed to Vietnam twice, and he was gone a lot, and he went through the whole rigmarole. But he really let me make my own choice and then supported it, which I thought was great. He answered my questions. He prepared me as much as he could for the reality that was in front of me, and that was good. So I appreciated that. But he didn't really. There wasn't, I would say, an overall noticeable expectation that I was going to follow in his footsteps. But when I made that decision, he was okay with it. Now, I can tell you it's a little bit different now. So myself, and I would have to say every single one of my veteran colleagues um, have actively told our kids that joining the military is a terrible idea. My oldest is 24, and she came to me last year and was strongly considering going into the military. She was looking to make a change, and for some of the same reasons that I went in when I was 27, was that she wanted to go in and make a change, and build a career and get some skills and be a part of something. And I could not go along with it. And so we had some very frank conversations where I just let her know it was a terrible idea. It was a terrible idea. And I basically had to say, look, if you're ever gonna trust me on one thing, if you're ever gonna take my advice, now's the time to take my advice. This is that one thing. And you can not listen to me anymore for the rest of your life if you want to. But on this one thing, I need you to trust me, and I need you to take my guidance on it. And so she ended up not joining, which I'm thankful for. But it was ironic. It'd be great if I could tell all of my kids, hey, look, I did this and it was awesome. Proud of service, go on in there, do the thing and be a part of something. But I can't. I just can't, not in good conscience. And I can't I just can't encourage anyone else to do it either, knowing what I know and seeing what I've seen. And not only the firsthand experiences that I've had, but learning from my peers, my fellow veterans, their experiences that they've had. It's just not something that I can support, because ultimately, when we insert ourselves into that system, we feed it and we help it grow stronger. And that's just not something that I can get behind anymore.
Which brings me to the question of, what was that turning point? You kind of touched on it earlier. It was the recruitment side of things that really
Yeah.
kind of, you know, did you in.
Yeah.
What, but was it realization of, being such a small cog in a huge machine that wasn't actually, doing the things that you joined it to do in the first place? But I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah. No,
were you
you're
happy to
good.
share?
Yeah. So again, when I was 27 when I went in, and so I wasn't I didn't really go in with as much naivety as some of the other kids that were in basic training with me. We had, a couple of 17-year-olds. The majority were 18 and 19-year-old kids that were fresh out of high school, fresh out of mama's house, and they were just jumping in and they wanted to be GI Joe and go out there and, kill terrorists and do all this other crazy stuff. And
And
I had
this was
already
9/11 times. Like, was that like a big driving force right there?
It was, yeah. This was
Wow.
in 2003, and this is when the invasion for Iraq was taking place. The week that I went to basic training, like the full scale invasion was going on, and so all the kids in there were pumped up. Everybody knew that the war was on, and they were excited. Um, Again, I had seen enough of the world already to know, and I guess my mind had matured to a point where I recognized that, okay, it wasn't just a clear cut situation of we're the good guys, these are the bad guys, we're going to go in there and stop them from doing bad things. It was just, I knew it wasn't quite that simple, and that obviously there was a bigger plan that our government was executing. But yeah, that was a general mindset. Did my best to help them understand, but when you're a fired up 19-year-old and you're ready to go in there and do army stuff, their ability to listen only goes so far at that age. However, once I went to Korea, went to Iraq, came back to the States, and then they put me in recruiting. There were there were moments of I guess more enhanced clarity that continued to present themselves. And I think some part of it must be attributed to the fact that I was then talking to people about joining the army that I was a part of. It was one thing for me to be a part of it. I think that we're masters at justifying our actions. I was able to say, well, providing for my family, they're paying for me to go to college. I'm a part of something bigger. I can train other soldiers and, help them see, the real way to be a leader and not be one of these terrible leaders, but to be a good leader. And so, you're able to kind of justify these things. And then it'll be punctuated by stuff like, you might see something terrible happen that shouldn't happen when you're over in a combat zone, which does occur. Or one of your friends takes his own life because he can't tolerate the guilt of something that he did while he was in the combat zone. And then you start to wonder more and more and more. But it was really the action of talking to other people and essentially selling them the military, because that's what recruiting is. It's just sales. And I mean, they send you to a 9-week sales school, and you live there, and it's like what you do all day long. And then they put you into a market, and you go out and you sell the military for 3 years typically. And it was the act of doing that. Now I can tell you that the first year that I did that was one of the toughest years of my life because I did make the decision from the very beginning that I wasn't going to lie to these young people, and I was going to tell them the truth. And the biggest question that I got, the main question that I got most often was, am I going to go to war? And so I have, mamas bringing in their 16, 17-year-old kids saying, well, he can join after he gets out of high school as long as you can promise me he's not going to go to war. And we were at war. Okay. There was no question. I mean, everything in Iraq, everything in Afghanistan was still popping. It was going off. And I would tell them that if your child joins the army, he's going to war. Now, for the first year, it was tough because people would just walk out. They're like, all right, I'm out of here. We don't want this. You need to give me a better deal. You need to do all this stuff. And I wasn't going to lie to them. My boss hated my guts. I didn't make my quota for a year, for the first year that I was there. My boss tried to get me transferred, tried to send me out of his recruiting station because I wasn't producing basically. And it didn't bother me at all that I wasn't producing because I was being honest. And the fact is, after that first year, people started to come to me and they would say, well, I heard that you're the only honest recruiter in town. So what's really going to happen? And I would tell them, listen, the army can be a good option for some people, but for most people, it's not. If this is what you're interested in, if you know that you're going to be a part of something like this, if you know that, then if you're okay with these things, okay, it may be an option for you. But if you think that you're doing it for these reasons, if you think you're going to get this, if you think you're doing it for that, if you think you're going to be safe, if you think you're not going to be contributing to something that's corrupt, okay, you may want to rethink your life and, go get a job, go to school. There are other things that you can do with your time. And that was my experience. In the next few years of it, they weren't as bad. But the thing is, the people that ended up joining at that point, that I put into the army, they went in there with as clear of a perception that they could possibly have. And these are individuals that I've stayed in touch with over the years that have contacted me and thanked me for getting them ready for it, that have thanked me for preparing them to go in there with the proper mindset of understanding exactly what it was they were getting involved in and then exactly how to navigate it. So it was a little bit of a different experience. But at the same time, when our government continues to get involved in things that have no business, that we have no business being involved in, and there's a cost to human life, there just comes a point where you can't be a part of it. And I just wasn't going to continue to promote people joining and be a part of feeding that machine, which is exactly what I was doing. I was feeding the machine. And I had to make a decision that I was just not going to do that anymore. And so ultimately I did make that decision. And in 2012, I got out.
Damn, I had no idea that they were that, 9-week live-in sales course, teaching you all of the, how to overcome objections, how to read body language,
Exactly.
all of this kind of, oh man, that's so bad. And then
Yeah.
what, how does the commission structure work? Obviously, you're going to have a basic pay, but the reason your boss hated you is because he needs a team of 10 to 15 people firing on all cylinders and making their quotas and hitting
Exactly.
their KPIs. And I'm guessing you pay per head or per sign up.
Not necessarily. No, there's that type of program will be introduced into the recruiting command from time to time, depending on how bad things are. It probably is right now. But when I was in, your basic incentive was your time. Once you made your quota, your time was your own. And so recruiters, for the most part, they don't live on military installations. They just live in the community in a house or an apartment or something like that. And so if you make your quota, then they stop bothering you. And then you don't really have to come into work anymore. So you have your time and you're still on the military. At least this was my experience. You're still getting paid your full-time military pay, but you have the freedom to just basically do whatever it is that you wanted to do out there with your time. So yeah, that was the incentive at that moment. But also we are in a different situation right now. So they could have introduced different things.
And then they can introduce would you be at liberty to give a little bonus or some kind of break in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah. Yeah. That has been known to happen.
I think it was Kyle from Pleb Labs told me he had a misdemeanor or two wiped from his slate if he signed up. And that could be in like parking ticket or, I don't know what.
Yeah. I'm just gonna say that they're yeah. they're going to do whatever they have to do to get people in. Sometimes that includes talking to judges. Sometimes that includes talking to doctors to have things removed from records and so forth. But I mean, I'm under no legal constraints from them at all right now. I'm fully and totally gone and disconnected from the military entirely. I have no obligation to them. But yeah, I'm just gonna say they're gonna do what they have to do to get people in, and there are a lot of people that are in the military right now that did not meet the legal and or physical qualifications to enlist. So
Classic sales. Find the pain point. Find
they're
the
gonna make
pain
it
point,
happen.
and then yeah, well, yeah, exactly. You find the pain point. What's that? Oh, right, you've got that hanging over your head. Don't worry, we can go talk to the judge. And
Yep.
yeah, and don't worry, you'll be in like this division, and like they don't often get shipped off to war, or you'll be in a nice like office job or something. You'll be in the bureau, like you'll be fine. Oh man.
Oh yeah, they definitely do it.
Wow, kids. I hope anyone listening to this that's of that age, anywhere between like 16 and 25. And if you're in Bitcoin, you're probably not thinking along the lines of joining the military anyway. But share this one with your friends. Like this is a very important episode. And we might even orange pull a few people because we've not talked about Bitcoin yet. But you leave. You've got to go find another job. You got to go do something. So
Yeah.
there's another part of this story, and then obviously the Bitcoin rabbit hole opens up at some stage.
Yeah. So yeah, when I left, I didn't I mean I didn't have a job lined up when I put in my notice and when my departure date was coming. And so it was a scary moment. It was a leap of faith. And it worked out. And it just through a series of events that I don't know how to explain, but a job just appeared before me. And since I had been recruiting, I was kind of putting out some feelers and seeing if there were any recruiting jobs as a civilian, any talent acquisition type roles. And one just like came available out of nowhere, which was a shock. And didn't require me to move. I had 3 young children at home at the time. And so it would, the idea was to be able to stick around where we were, which we did. And it was funny because at the time, I didn't meet the education requirements for the job. I did not have a bachelor's degree, and the job required a bachelor's degree. But they told me the hiring manager told me that he would hire me if I were able to pass this professional and human resources certification. We call it a PHR. It's a really tough exam. It's a really, really tough certification, and people study up for months and months and months to pass this thing. And he told me, yeah, the offer is yours. You can have the job if you can pass this PHR exam. And so I found the next one that was going to happen, and it was about in a month and a half. And I studied myself half to death. And I went in, and this was that moment. And I'm thinking, oh man, if this doesn't happen, I'm out of the Army, because you can't, I can't reverse course. I'm already on my way out, and I'm out and I don't have a job. So it was a little scary. And I went and I sat down, and man, that was one of the most intense exams that I ever took. And I passed it, which was, I mean, it was astonishing to me. And I was looking at the scores, and I still don't know how the math works. I don't know if somebody slipped them a 20 or something on my way out the door, but I passed the PHR exam. And I called the guy up and I said, hey man, yeah, no problem. I passed the PHR exam. I got it. And he's like, cool, man, the job's yours. You can start in 2 weeks. So I did. So I went into civilian talent acquisition, and that was my first introduction into a civilian job post military. I was in for 9 years, so that was my civilian introduction from there. And it was totally different. Now, a lot of aspects of recruiting as a civilian, they are similar to military. There's a lot of sales involved. There's a lot of conversations, relationship building. Except at the end of the day, you don't feel like washing yourself in bleach because you feel like a disgusting animal that just fed someone to the war machine. So that was a refreshing change. I was in a contract role working in the beer industry, recruiting people to come work in a beer company, which was fantastic. So, it's beer. Can't go wrong there. So I did that for a couple of years and then moved into talent acquisition in healthcare. And then during this time, during this time, I went ahead and got my bachelor's degree and then got started on my master's. And my master's was a program called Human Resource Development, which is basically training, talent development, talent management. And so it's identifying, people within organizations and what they do, and then how to develop them and then grow the organization by developing a people. So I moved into that field from the acquisition side to the development side, into coaching and training people and managing talent, identifying talent pipelines, bringing them into industries, and then going into a broader strategic scale from there. Primarily working in healthcare, manufacturing, and some marketing industries as well. But then, a couple years ago, I'm still relatively newish, by the way, to Bitcoin. So a couple of years ago, my dad, actually the Vietnam veteran, the salty old Vietnam guy who's 80 something now, he starts telling me about Bitcoin, and I'd kind of seen it in the news, seen it around, and I was thinking, okay, well, that's cool. It's internet money, and somebody's going to get rich, and a bunch of people are going to get ripped off, and this is probably not something that I really want to fool around with. So, kind of brushed it to the side, and then my dad kept on telling me about it. He'd send me little articles, he'd send me little videos from Swan Bitcoin, and turned me on to Jeff Booth eventually, and The Price of Tomorrow, and said, son, you gotta check out this book. It's so cool. And so I'm checking it out. And you know how it goes. When you introduce Jeff Booth into the mix, things start to happen. And so it started making sense. And it was like, finally, like the light came on. And I said, oh, shit. All right. And so I called up my dad and I was like, all right, Dad, I think I know what you're saying here. So this is more than just some scam. This is actually, Bitcoin is actually money. And he was like, yeah, that's right. And so then I kept digging. And then, started looking at it from a veteran perspective, from a military perspective, and the impact that it could have on the world and on individuals. And it dawned on me, like everybody else knows is common sense at this point, but it dawned on me that it was more than that. So I called up my dad again. I'm like, Dad, this is more than money. This is about freedom. He's like, yeah, you got it, son. You got it. And so from that point, we started talking about, okay, well, what can we do? We've got to do something. We have this knowledge. We know what we know. We can't just like take this and, buy a bunch of Bitcoin and then just sit on it and not do something in the world. And so one of the things that I had been doing since 2012 up until the present had been working with military veterans on them, on supporting their transitions from active duty, coaching them, helping them to find civilian careers, walking them through the transition process, getting them involved with employers, with volunteerism, with nonprofits, and essentially just supporting them on their way out. Several of whom were actually people that I had put in the military in my previous life. And so I recognized pretty quickly that this was something that was a mission that veterans could be involved in after military service. And so a little while ago, I'm pretty heavily involved in LinkedIn, and I had been in there, they call it the Boomer Network because for whatever reason, there's a bunch of old people in there doing everybody's got the humble brag on LinkedIn. You know how it goes. It's a lot of self promotions, a lot of that stuff, but it's for, as far as business networking goes, it's pretty effective. But there's a significant veteran population on LinkedIn. And so I started searching for people that had been in the military at any point in their lives that had the word Bitcoin in their profile. And people started popping up. And I was like, oh, okay, well, there's more. So I just started sending out messages. Hey, I was in the Army. I'm new to Bitcoin. Saw that you're a veteran. I'm interested to learn about your experience. Boom, 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 boom. And people just started responding. And they were like, yeah, man, come on in, brother. Let's talk about this stuff. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And next thing I know, I'm talking with Alex Stanzik. He was the previous host of Cafe Bitcoin. He works with Swan, and got connected with him, got connected with a gentleman named Shane Hazel. And next thing I know, last year I'm down in Miami and I'm having a conversation with Alex and Shane, and we're talking about, okay, look, man, this is real. There's a mission here with veterans and Bitcoin. So how can we get this going? And so then we connected with a couple other guys, Mike Hobart and Jordan Gambrell, and decided to go ahead and launch a podcast. And so we launched a podcast last year. I think it was around June, and we call it Bitcoin Veterans because we like to keep it simple. And we've been doing that now since last June. And again, there was that Twitter chat group that we migrated over to another platform and started just inviting people over, and people started coming to us. And now we've got over 500 veterans who are Bitcoiners that are a part of this community that we have. And it started getting unmanageable as one group. So we broke it up into different regions of the United States. And then there were a bunch of civilians that wanted to become a part of it. And so a lot of them were military spouses, veteran spouses. So we created a separate group for them, created a separate group for the worldwide veterans. And that's where we have our UK guys starting to get plugged in. And then it just kept on going. And now we've got a separate subgroup for communications, one for Citadel building, one for merch design for those that are into that sort of thing. We have nonprofits that are springing up throughout the group, and it's the craziest thing because there is no leader of this group of veterans. Now we've got the 5 individuals that are kind of like the founders of it, but we're not in there making executive decisions. We're not in there telling people how to spend their time or what to do with their sats. It's just a self-led mission now that we have hundreds and hundreds of veterans involved in that's just propelling itself forward. It's awesome. And one of those missions is one that I went ahead and launched, and it's called Operation Bitcoin. And Operation Bitcoin it's a nonprofit that is focused on primarily Bitcoin education for military veterans and active duty service members. If you're familiar with Me Premier Bitcoin, they're based in El Salvador, my first Bitcoin. We were approved as a light node with them this past October. And so we are now we're bona fide and we're ready to rock with them. And so they have been, as you probably know, they're open source with everything. And so they have granted us complete and total access to all of the learning materials, all the curriculum, which we have modified to deliver to military and veteran audiences. So yeah, that's in a nutshell what we have going on. And we can talk more about Operation Bitcoin if you'd like, or really anything. I kind of threw a lot at you right there. So
No, yeah, it's great. And you've reminded me how we got introduced now through Scott.
Right.
Scott and Tali, who've been on the show, who made Huddle Up, great proponents of homeschooling as well, and trying to bring, because there's an overlap. You say that you had to stop feeding the beast, essentially. Young men and women's hearts and souls between the age of 16 and 25, whatever, when they're primed for it.
Yeah.
I think the same about the education system, state education. That's just the first step of this mill of just churning out robots. And how many kids are told throughout their whole schooling career that you're never going to amount to anything, you're not going to be any good at this, blah, blah, blah. They're just being primed for that, just falling into the industrial military complex, basically.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And I hope a lot of young parents and those Bitcoiner couples that are now having babies are listening to these conversations and coming to the same conclusion, and they won't send their kids to either of these. I don't. If you do not send them to state education, I can't imagine like a well-rounded, homeschooled kid that has honed themselves in some shape or form, whatever it is, has taken their interest. I can't imagine them just throwing themselves at the mercy of like this industrial military complex to become, for want of a better word, cannon fodder in a far off land, or fly, manless drones like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point actually. During my 3.5 years of recruiting for the Army, I enlisted over 100 people into the Army, and the number of them that were homeschooled is exactly zero. Not a single homeschooled child that I put into the military because their parents, I suppose, had informed them and educated them in a way that was different than the state schools in their indoctrination process. There's a reason why in the U.S. that military recruiters are allowed access into the public schools. There's a bill, and it was passed back in the day. I believe it was George Bush Jr. who passed the bill that gives military recruiters access to public school students. And you're not obviously going to see any such thing with homeschooled and most private schools for that case. But yeah, not a single one. Every single person that I put into the military was a product of the public school system. Not to say that brilliant people can't come out of the public school system, because obviously people find their own way. But by and large, yeah, you're going to see a pretty tremendous difference between homeschooled students and students who are in public school. And being a product of both myself, I can tell you that that I've seen both sides of that machine, as it were, to use that theme. But yeah, I spent several years in homeschool and several years in public school, and you can see it. There's a different in mindset. There's a different in overall perceptions of systems and reality that exists. And you can tell specifically people's ability to conduct interrelational transactions with people, just basically how they get along with other people and treat their fellow humans. It's just different. There's just a different level of emotional intelligence. There's a different level of awareness. And you can tell from the difference between homeschooled and many public school students, you can see that they just tend to possess stronger relationships with their home support system. You can tell they have a bond with their parents is what I'm really getting at. And you know as well as anybody. And that alone is hugely important. I mean, it's tremendous. I had the pleasure of spending some time with Seb Bunny recently.
Yeah.
His book, The Hidden Costs of Money, he talks about this, the breakdown of the family structure due to as being a byproduct of the fiat system. And I could not agree with that any more than I do. And it's amazing stuff. But yeah, big difference. And it's encouraging to see more of a shift. In the States, we're seeing a big shift towards the homeschool movement, and Scott and Tally are doing a lot of really good work. Scott's an amazing guy. And I had the pleasure of meeting Tally as well. And what they're doing is it's so cool. It's so cool. And I have a feeling it's getting ready to take off even bigger than where it already is. So yeah, I'm excited to be a part of them. And Scott actually, this hasn't been publicly announced yet, so I guess I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. I mentioned that Operation Bitcoin is a nonprofit organization, and Scott sits on our board of directors, and so he brings that unique perspective of understanding the true value of education and how we can implement processes and programs into our approach when it comes to educating veterans. And I think you used the word overlap. There's definitely an overlap between homeschoolers and military veterans, and that's a sweet spot that he is finding right now. So it's really cool stuff.
And what excites me about this little initiative that you started and how quickly it's growing, the people that military veterans are, they are well-drilled people. These are doers. They know how to get shit done. And
exactly.
What a bunch of people to have on, our side, one of us banging the table, like just another one and another one and another one. I had Ben Kincaid on from Bridger Solutions, and he was talking about, what they're doing with mining. I'm like, so wait a minute, like you got a bunch of ex-logistics guys, setting up mining rigs and all over different parts of Africa, and you've got the on-the-ground knowledge. How do we lose? Like, these are the people. And I love the fact that, the people that are going to get drawn to you, first of all, can then lean on you for the knowledge and then find their little cohort in that group and then fork off and go and find exactly what it is they need to do to add value to Bitcoin in whatever way unique and special to them. And that could be anything. That could be podcasts, YouTube, apparel, mining, absolutely anything at all. And it's great to see. And this is what gives us all hope. And I was just at Bitcoin Atlantis, and there is a lot of there are some after Bitcoin Atlantis. I wanted to stop by, and we had to fly through Porto, and I saw a friend of mine, and he's in a dark place. He's in a dark place, and he's a Bitcoiner, but he's starting to lose faith. And I'm like, man, go meet some Bitcoiners. Like, I cannot be the only one you meet like once every 18 months or something. And for you to unload onto me, like, I've just been in Madeira for the last 2 weeks. If you'd have come to that stadium for 3 days, you'd have felt the most impressive, positive, hopeful vibes, the energy, the frequency. And not only that, it wasn't just a bunch of dudes, it was families all over the place. And it's so tangible. That's why I want people to learn about your kind of groups, other initiatives. Orange Pill app, just make an account, go and find your nearest pleb and be that first meetup, 2 of you in a coffee shop or in a pub. A friend of mine, Thibaut, he moved to Andorra. They started a meetup. He said, dude, we got a meetup coming up. We're over 100 people. I'm like, man, like, nice. That happened quick.
That is awesome. Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Orange Pill app, actually. They're first of all, they're really cool over there. What they're doing is fantastic. They actually created a badge for veterans to add to their profile on there. And so what happens is they if there's any veterans on there, they contact me and they say, hey, I'm a veteran, and I ask them a couple questions. I don't like do a fingerprint or a retinal scan or anything to make them prove that they were in the service, but ask them a couple of questions, and if it's reasonably believable that they served in the military, then Orange Pill app will add a little green star to their profile. And so that's just another way for the Bitcoin veteran community to grow and to find each other and to interact, because it's like you said, I mean, there's nothing that can really substitute the in-person feeling that you have when you're hanging out with other people that are on a shared mission with you. It's just, there's something special about it, and Twitter is amazing. Social media is cool. It lets us, learn and be inspired and interact with one another. But I mean, if you really want to experience what I believe Satoshi invented Bitcoin for us to experience, go and hang out with other Bitcoiners. Go and interact with people in person. Sit there and look at each other face to face, and share the same space and eat food together and talk to each other and shake hands and pat each other on the back. It's just a completely and totally different experience. And I believe that is one of the hidden benefits that is becoming very clear to me from Bitcoin, is it brings out the best of humanity. And it enables us to be more human with one another, because it becomes this all-important connection that we share. And then regardless of whatever other factors may exist in our lives or our pasts that make us different, this makes us the same. And to me, that's just the whole point. I was actually at Bitcoin Atlantis too. I saw you from across the crowd a couple of times, but I didn't feel like going and busting through your entourage to take a But I spent some time hanging out with, I want to share a quick story of a moment that I experienced with John Dene from Premier Bitcoin. When I first got there, I connected with him. I came from the airport, connected with him, and he asked me if I want to go on a hike. And this was over at one of the spots right down there by the ocean. And so I said, yeah, man, let's go. And, I was exhausted, but what the heck? I mean, how many opportunities are you going to have to do something like this? So we went out and we went hiking in one of these beautiful places. And there was a handful of the guys from Me Premier Bitcoin with us, and we were kind of walking And there were a few moments where John and I were alone. It's just two of us walking. We started talking about our backgrounds a little bit, getting to know each other. And we discovered that at the moment in time when I was joining the military to go and to be a part of this machine of destruction that was going forth to do what it does, at that very moment in time, he was on the other side protesting this very thing very publicly. And I think it's a matter of record at this point, but, being arrested, multiple times, fighting against this thing, the way that he puts it, throwing his body at this problem in an attempt to fight it. At the meantime, I was throwing my body into that problem from the other direction. And so we were literally fighting against each other from that perspective on this topic. And now that was, 20 years ago. And now you look at, now the two of us hiking on this mountain on the island of Madeira with thousands of other Bitcoiners, all joined by this one commonality, by this one common theme in our lives that is ultimately to further the mission of freedom for all people in a way that is constructive, in a way that is unifying, in a way that is collaborative and not divisive. It was an amazing moment that he and I shared when we came to that conclusion with each other. And then from that point forward, that's how I started my mindset at this event. And then from then, it was like my vision was tuned to continue to look for examples of that. And that's all that I saw. That's all that I saw the entire time I was there. And with Michael Saylor talking about it, with Seb Bunny talking about it, Jeff Booth, his presentation, it had me in tears.
Yep.
That man, he just like opened up his heart and shared it with everybody there. And it was fantastic. But that was what it was all about. It was all about the human connection. And there's something that I want to share with you about veterans, because it's a question that I've gotten many times on this journey. And even in Madeira, I gave a small presentation and someone asked me, how can you be a part of a government that does what it does and also Bitcoin? How can I do what I've done and then be a part of something like this? But the thing is, veterans want peace. That's why so many of us are drawn to this mission, because we have seen what happens, because we've been a part of what happens. Okay, we have pushed it. We have been involved in that machine. We have taken life. We have been a part of something that is corrupt and dark and evil and is really the most highly concentrated embodiment of the brutality and destructiveness of the fiat system. We've been there. We've been a part of it. And so we have seen the problem. We have seen the pointy end of that problem and the damage that it can create. And so having that in-depth understanding of it, that very personal understanding of it, positions us in a way that we have the ability to create solutions for it in a way that some people may not have and they may not possess. And so we find that there are so many of us that are being attracted to this. It's like I said, we're not marketing anything. We're not pushing out. We're not like sending out emails trying to get a hold of veterans. At this point, we've become a center of gravity and they're coming to us. At the same time, we know that there is going to be in the very near future an increase in the amount of bad information that's going to be coming out to the general public as it pertains to Bitcoin. And this is part of the specific mission of Operation Bitcoin, is to ensure that we're out there and that we are contacting them first, so we can be sure that they're getting the right information. So they're not being sold on these ETFs. So they're not being sold on CBDCs and all this other garbage that we believe is going to be pushed in front of our fellow veterans and service members. We're going to get out there and we're going to get to them first. And we're going to give them the truth and we're going to give them the light and we're going to bring them onto the mission. And we believe that now is the time to do that, especially going into 2024. You know, the energy that we're all experiencing right now. You know, the wave that we're all riding on, and our adversaries are fully aware of it. And while they may seem like they're bumblers, while they may seem like they don't know how to make a good decision, they're not stupid. And they do know what they're doing. And they do have a plan. And we believe that it is our mission to be there to provide a counterforce a counterbalance to that plan and to do what we do. And it's like you said, to get shit done.
You just led me to the final question perfectly. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
Good Lord, man. That's a good question. Wow. One last orange pill to give to somebody. Well, I can tell you, it's not a specific person, but I want you to hear me out. I would give it to that individual that feels that need to be a part of something bigger than themselves, that's on the doorstep of enlisting in the military now. I would give it to every future member of the military, and I would equip them with the knowledge and the wisdom and the light and the truth that is Bitcoin prior to them entering into the military, so that they could then bring that truth and that light into the military and share that with service members from their first day in the military until the day that they leave the military. So that instead of having people that are going in and being manipulated and used and thrown away, we have individuals that go into the military with the mindset of service, but also with an understanding of sovereignty, also with an understanding of self-reliance, also with an understanding of what true freedom looks like, and then being able to navigate a career of service from end to end, and then join the military as a truly free person that promotes actual freedom, and then leave the military person as exactly the same thing. So I would orange pill every single person that is going to serve in the military before they enter, and then see what kind of an impact that has on the world.
Love it, mate. Absolutely love it. And really appreciate everything you're doing. It's a labor of love, but it's not even a labor. Like, we're all doing it because we feel this pull, this urge. That this isn't work to me, hosting these podcasts, editing them, writing the show notes, putting them out, going to the conferences, doing the hosting and whatever else. It's all exhausting, but it's a good exhausting, and it's positive. And you know that I met a dude there that we did a panel where we asked, it was kind of a surprise panel where we just let the crowd in the stadium ping questions at Preston, Jeff, Lynn, and James Lavish. And one of the first people to ask that question come and found me later and said, "Thank you for doing that. That was really cool, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, cool. No problem. How long you been in Bitcoin?" It's like 3 days.
That's awesome.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday of that
Wow.
conference. I'm like, wow. What? You have any idea of the people you just asked the question to? He's like, not really, but I'm like, geez, man, your rabbit hole story is going to be epic. Like, in 2 years' time, when you're like, yeah, so there I am. I bought a ticket. I went to the thing, and because it was just in town. And then, yeah, I asked Lynn Alden this question. I'm like, what? You asked Lynn Alden? Yeah, Jeff Booth was sat right next to her.
Wow, man, that's a strong start. He's gonna have a hard time ever meeting that level of interaction with people like that again. But I tell you, man, it's the coolest thing, and I can tell you that individual was so fortunate to have that experience, to not have that starstruck feeling of, but it's just to ask these people that, to them, all that other stuff and all those other preconceived notions, that's all gone out the window, just to have that blank slate and to be able to start off their experience like that is really cool. But they are going to have some pretty damn cool stories when they start to realize what they've gotten involved in and be like, oh yeah, that's no big deal. Yeah, that's the beginning of my Bitcoin story. That is awesome though.
All right,
But
Gabe.
no,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, but you're right, man. When you know when you know why you're doing what you're doing, and when your purpose is clear, then it doesn't feel like work. You just know, when you wake up every day, I know what I have to do today because this is why I'm here. And that's something, again, that I've seen that is so impactful in the lives of veterans, especially, is being connected and tied to a purpose, and not just kind of floating around in the breeze, especially after doing something that was something that is doing terrible things in the world. To be able to get out and then to find something that truly does have a purpose, that truly is making a positive impact, it's life changing. It is life changing.
How can people reach out and find you or join your group? What's the best way to go? Is there a website? Is there a Telegram group, Twitter?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. They can hop on our website, operationbitcoin.io. Also, we're on Twitter, op_Bitcoin. We're on there. And then if you want to get plugged into the Bitcoin Veterans Group, best place is on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. And it's just Bitcoin Veterans. It's real easy to find. But yeah, hop on there. It'll be easy to get connected with us on there. We have links to all of our other social media channels, Nostr, and all that cool stuff. We are out there. So if anybody's not on Nostr yet, check it out. It is the way of the future. So yep. Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate you making the time today.
Thank you, man. Really, really fun. Thank you for sharing everything that you shared about, your past, the military, and yeah, here's to look into the bright orange future. Thanks, and look forward to actually catching up in real life. I'm sorry we missed each other in Atlantis, in Bitcoin Atlantis, in Madeira, but next one for sure.
We'll get there. Thanks, Daniel.
See you, man.